Hi, I'm Teacher Eddy. Welcome to your English class. I hope you're ready because we're going to start right away. Today we're going to talk about imaginary situations and consequences. But first, let's check the facts. This is my information. I live in Mexico and I speak Spanish. This is true for me in this moment. Now let's imagine. If I lived in France, I would speak French. This situation is imaginary and the consequence is also imaginary. Now let's analyze the sentence. If I lived in France, I would speak French. This has two parts, the condition and the result. We can change the order and we can also say, I would speak French if I lived in France. Let's focus on the condition for the moment. If I lived in France. The first element that we notice is the particle if. That is always necessary when we talk about the condition. Now let's focus on the verb. The verb is in subjunctive, but don't worry, that is exactly the same conjugation as the verb in past. Let's practice a little. Here we have a list of verbs that we're going to transform into the subjunctive or past form. Let's make it a little more interactive. Let me bring out my board. And there we go. We're going to connect them. So in this case, work in subjunctive or simple past is worked. Speak is going to connect with spoke, have, had, study, studied, and finally be, was, and were, depending on the subject. Now let's go back to the presentation. What happened in negative? In negative, we're going to follow exactly the same rules that we follow in past. We're going to use the auxiliary didn't. So for example, spoke in negative would be didn't speak. Was or were, wasn't, weren't. Studied, didn't study. Worked, didn't work. And had, didn't have. Now let's move on. Here we have our sentence again, and now we're going to focus on the result. In the result, as you notice, we need to use the modal verb for imaginary situations would, and we don't need to transform in any way our verb. I would speak, I would have, I would live, I would work, exactly the same. Now, what happens in negative? We are going to use the auxiliary wouldn't. So, now let's go back to the first information. If I live in Mexico and I speak Spanish. With this, we created, if I live in France, I would speak French. But now let's try to do something in negative, using the same information. If I didn't live in Mexico, I wouldn't speak Spanish. So in this case, we are using the same information, but with a negative condition and a negative result. Remember that in negative, we need to follow the same rules as in past, and here we need to use the auxiliary, but in negative, wouldn't. Now, let's try to make a sentence. Use these elements to create one complete sentence. I'm going to give you a clue. All the elements for the condition are in the same color, and all the elements for the result are in the same color. Take a moment, pause the video, and try to make it. Now let's check the result. If Mario spoke English, he would work in the USA. Of course, it's also possible to change the order. Mario would work in the USA if he spoke English. In this case, the colors indicated the correct order, but you remember that you can switch that order. I hope you have learned a lot. Continue practicing and making more sentences so you can acquire this better. I am Teacher Eddy, and I will see you next class.